today we are going to clean everything. As you can see, the winch line is loose because I just reeled it back in, spooled it in lightly as I was done. So we're going to wash the winch line, we're going to wash the gear, we're going to straighten everything up, and we're going to I'm actually going to take the winch line off the drum and soak it and clean it properly, and I'll show you all that, and then I will put it back on the drum and all nice and neat and pretty. So that's what we're going to do. Now we can get a couple of buckets, water, some detergent, and I'll show you how to start cleaning this and inspecting it. Went outside, filled up the cooler with some water and a little bit of soap that you would use to wash your car so you know it's safe. Now I'm just gonna sit this in here. I switched the coolers out because this one's a little bit bigger. I'm gonna submerge everything, make sure it's down in there good. Use my Factor 55 hook end to keep it submerged because it is synthetic and it's going to float a little bit. So we're just going to let that soak for now. And how you're going to clean this out is just like this. I'm going to push this together. That's going to separate the different threads, and that's what you're going to do. You're going to put that in the water and you're going to move along. So you're going to be doing this under the water. Do that, move a little bit, do that, move a little bit, do that, move a little bit, and you're going to do that for a while. So because this is 85 feet of synthetic line, and you've got to do the whole thing. And what I'm probably going to do also is when I get to the end, I'm going to take this protective sheath off so I can get underneath this and get to the cable that's underneath that to make sure that there's no sand in between this protective sheath and the cable itself. So that's all we're going to be doing for the next, who knows how long, hour or so. So I'm going to start at the end where it attaches to the winch itself. You know, clean all that off. So you just want to get all the dirt and everything out of there. So I will be back when we're done. This is going to take a while. So there you have it. That's the process. I'm going to clean up everything. Even your hook, if you have a hook, or if you have a Factor 55 link, as such as I do, make sure everything's clean. So let's leave that soak for a little bit, and we'll get back at it. I'll show you what I'm going to take it as I do it. I'm going to take it out, put it into this cooler so that I can dry it from there. Okay. To get this sleeve off, protective sleeve off, you're just going to pull it and then grab the end and you're going to milk it down the line until it comes off. Once you can get it to the end here, it should come off much easier. Right now. There it goes. Easy day. Alright, so that's that sleeve off of there. It's got mud and dirt and a bunch of stuff all over it. So we'll clean that up, put that over there, and we'll carry on with the rest of the winch line. Since we got the sleeve off, I got a little scrub brush so I can get all of this stuff off of this sleeve so it's nice and clean. This stuff's been crushed into this for I don't know how long. I've had this winch 2 years. I said it's going to take a little while. Okay, as you can see, I've got that whole protective sleeve that is pretty much stays wrapped around the drum so that it can protect the line instead of the line being wrapped around the drum. Clean, debris free, no sand in it, all good. That's one part of it done. So now we can continue on with the cleaning of the actual winch cable itself. The part that should be the most, or the cleanest, since it's protected by that sheath. But this loosens up all the bands, all the braids, you know, so it can start off fresh too. Because it's been compressed. That's the thing, it's been compressed. As I'm doing this, I'm looking at anything that may be a tear or a broken braid or any kind of discrepancy in the line itself. Like I said, as I do it, I'm going to feed it into the other one so it gets it out of the water. So you're pinching, inspecting, moving on. Pinching, inspecting, moving on. Swishing it around in the water is allowing anything inside those braids to be released and then it'll sink down to the bottom. So, alright. Only another 83 feet to go. Okay, as I'm doing this, I'm seeing a little bit of discoloration in the line right here. And that's just from previous winch operations where dirt got in there or mud and then it stayed on there. I didn't wash it off, didn't clean it, didn't do the proper techniques, and it just stained the line. So, but I'm not seeing any kind of these fuzzies. That's fine, but there's no breaks in the braid. That's just natural when the fibers rub across dirt, metal, whatever you're winching, and it gets caught. It's just gonna rub the outer layer of synthetic skin basically off of it. It's threads, but like I said, there's no breaks in any of the braids at all. So still in very, very good shape. Just got some discoloration from past mud and winch operations that I've been doing. So just thought I'd let you see that. We're about maybe 3/4 of the way through. What I've been doing is just how I explained before. I'm doing this under the water. And I'm kind of just pushing it into my hand, so I know what I've done. And as I go, I'm just kind of gripping it in my hand so that it's not going back down, because this water is nasty. You can see this water is brown. It was clear. So that just tells you how dirty the line was. So, and then when I get, I don't know, when I get my hand full, what I do is I'm dropping it over here on top of the rest of the cable, and I'm grabbing it and gripping it through my hand, and I'm pulling it. And what that's doing is that's getting as much of the water out of the line as I can. And then we move to the next section. And that's it. I mean, about 3/4 of the way through, like I said. And this is taking me probably 30 minutes. So it's time consuming, to say the least, but by the color of this water, it needed to be done. So I'm at the end. Well, I'm not at the end, but I'm at the other protective covering. So I figured what I would do is it's not as long, and I don't want to take that end off of. I don't want to take my Factor 55 end off. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to slide this down. I've already cleaned this sheath. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide this down to a point that I can get to everything. And then I can clean this part of the winch line without having to take this sheath off. Now I can feel that I'm at line that I've already cleaned. So put that in there. And we'll clean this up. There's bound and determined that there's stuff that gets up underneath these sheaths that are supposed to protect the line. You don't want any sand underneath there, because that grit is just going to wear at the fiber and it's going to create a weak spot in your line. So that's why you do everything correctly. Preventive maintenance. If you do this every second or third time that you go out and you've completely pulled all your line out and you've used every bit of line, you were in the weeds, you were in the sand, you were in the mud, wherever you were at, then maybe you just need to come home and take the time to do it correctly. It's going to save you money in the end, and it protects your investment, and your safety equipment can save your life. During this, I could feel hard spots on the line where you could tell that it hadn't been released in a long time. So don't be wary of that. I just spent a little bit extra time on those spots to loosen up the braiding and get those fibers free so that they could, spring back to life where they're supposed to be. See, now I'm getting into the part that is the splice, which will be another video in the future because I'm going to break this line and then put it back together. And how you put it back together is, this is one line that is turned back on itself and fed through the middle of the line all the way back to, it felt right about here. So that's about how much line is inside of itself, and when it's pulled tight like a Chinese finger puzzle, that's what keeps that from coming apart. The tension of the two pieces of synthetic line on top of each other pulling together is how it stays together. Chinese finger puzzle, that's about as close as I can come to explaining the technique of why it does what it does. Alright, and that's the whole line. That's the Factor 55 link. Everything is nice and clean. And look at this water. That's horrible. It was clear when I started. Completely clear. And now you can't even see through the bottom. So that's how dirty that line was. Alright. I'll put that sheath back on. And then we'll wind it back onto the drum. Of course, after you clean the drum, we're going to go do that as well, because there's a bunch of stuff that's on the drum, so we're going to clean that up. So, to the next step. Okay, so we're just going to clean off the drum of the winch. Make sure there's no... Make sure that there's no loose, not loose, but sharp edges that could catch the synthetic line. And I don't feel anything. This winch did have a steel cable on it when I got it, and I switched out to synthetic. You can see the line right here of the steel cable. But there's nothing untoward, nothing that would damage the synthetic line on here. You want to do the same thing on your fair lead. And here you want to inspect it to make sure that there's nothing sharp or jagged or anything like that that's going to affect the line from spooling through there. If you're at angles up, down, and both sides, you just got to make sure that it's all smooth. And this, I've already checked this. This is all smooth, so all good. So it's time to put the protective sheath back on the winch line at the beginning where it wraps around the drum. So what I did is I had some old cord, which is pretty solid cord, and I just took a couple minutes and I fed it straight through. And I'm just going to hook that through here and pull the winch line through. Should be pretty simple. Got a nice hole right there. Just split this up, tie it off. Easy day. So I separated the cord. I was gonna stick it through here just like this. Put it through one hole. I'm just gonna wrap this tight like that. Wrap it back under so it doesn't pull apart. That should pull this whole thing. Feed it in there. Grab the other end. I should just pull it straight through. Well, we'll work it straight through. Nothing on the line just pulls straight through. So we're gonna have to work it a little bit. Once it gets started, it should be okay. There you go. Got it started anyway. And we'll just keep pulling it down. Slide the sheath on. Just like that. So I'll just continue to do that and get it all, that sheath back on there. And then we'll install the winch line onto the drum. So I got the sheath all the way back on. Took a little bit longer than I expected, so just be aware of that. If you're going to remove it, it's going to take a little while to slide the line back through this sheath. Like I said, I used a piece of wire, pulled it out, worked it, slid it down, pulled it out, slid it down, you know, all that good stuff. So just be aware of that. It's going to take a little bit of time to get that back on. Or you could also not take it off and just slide it down the line like I did at the other end. Clean the line, slide the sheath back down the line to where it belongs. Probably much easier, but you know, live and learn. Okay, so initially I'm going to put the line back through my fair lead and attach it to the mechanism where it needs to be attached to. The little hole right back in here where it needs to be attached to. Just make sure you're winding the line in the correct way, of course. So I've already ran that little test. So as the drum turns this way, it's going to wind the rope onto it. And that's why I'm putting it to the back side so that it will wind up correctly. This just needs to be snug, not over tightened. go, that's done. So then you want to put your gloves on for safety. Okay. You don't want, if you have a steel line, it's even more important that you wear gloves because the steel could have a sharp braid that came out or whatever. You don't want to take the chance of, you want to wear leather gloves. I'm not wearing leather gloves, I'm wearing just regular mechanics gloves because this is synthetic line. So there's that. Steel line, leather gloves. Synthetic line, gloves. So what we're going to do is we're going to get this first row set on here. We're going to get the first row of line that's covered by this sheath set up correctly. All the way pushed to the side. You want it uniform. It's going to eventually overlap, but you want that first row to be absolutely correct. And obviously, I mean, this is, the winch companies know what's going on, so this first row is protected by this sheath. So the sheath is about the end, and I'm at the end of the first row. Okay, so I'm at the end of the first row. And you really want to have some weight so that all the rest of the line is going to be at a point where if you just pull out a little bit, it's just not going to tighten up on itself. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the rest of this line and I'm going to hook it up to my Titan, which is down the driveway a little ways. See if I can show that. Down there. I'm going to hook up the winch line to that, and I'm going to pull the Jeep in neutral to the Titan so that there's some pressure on the line as I spool it back in. So I have my other camera up there. The winch is hooked up to the Titan. I'm going to put the Jeep in neutral. And we are going to pull it toward the Titan, keeping the winch line tight. And we are going to wrap it correctly. I am just guiding it with my hand so that it goes in the correct spot. You don't want to run your winch for more than 45 seconds to a minute at a time. You know, so you don't want to heat it up to the point where you're going to burn something out. So I'm going to take a second, and we're going to let it rest for a minute or a little bit, and we're going to continue. And it's really just pushing the line with my hand against it, using my leg if I have to, and then just pulling and just letting the Jeep pull toward the truck. You want to do that. You can use a tree, you can use whatever you want. I'm just using my Titan because it's easy. So you can see the winch is starting to strain the battery. So I'm going to turn the Jeep on in a minute and let the battery be charging while we're winching the rest of the way. To the truck, so I'm gonna put the Jeep in park. I'm gonna take the pressure off the winch line. I'm gonna put the rest of the 10 feet in by hand. So now the Jeep's in park. I'm gonna keep tension on the line as I go over to the Titan and unhook it. And now I can just gradually finish the evolution. Okay, now we're starting to get into the protective coating again. When you get all the way down to a point where you only have this much left, what you do not want to do is you don't want to over tighten the link or the hook onto the fair lead. You want to just have it snug. You also want to be careful of the thimble so it slides through and doesn't get hooked on the roller or the Hossy fair lead. There we go. That's it. All done. So it's snug, but it's not overly tight. And that's the proper spooling back in of a winch line at any time, but definitely after you've washed it and cleaned it and did some preventive maintenance on it. Alright, hope you guys enjoy it. get some information out of it. Don't forget to subscribe. More videos coming soon. Peace out.